St. Joseph watches over the house and never lets us down. He did the same, of course, for the Holy Family. He was actually the head of that family because he had the rights of paternity, even though he was only the adoptive father of the Holy Child. But it was his duty at the beginning of the Shabbat to preside over the sacred meal on the Friday evening. And through him, the Lord Jesus received in his humanity rights to the succession and lineage of David, and therefore the fulfillment of the prophecies. He had to answer the call of the legal system and be registered in his place of Davidic origin, Bethlehem, and thus fulfilled the prophecy that Bethlehem would be what it would be, even though the least of the cities of Judah. The house of bread, Bethlehem, where David, of course, had been. We know that the Lord used the mystic, now Saint Miriam, Marie de Jésus crucifié, the stigmatized Carmelite, to bring about the building of what he wanted there at that spot. The Carmel of Bethlehem stands over the place where David shepherded his sheep and where he was anointed by the prophet Samuel. And the Lord wanted that it be built in the form of the Tower of David. It is circular, and he himself drew up the plans through that mystic. With regard to St. Joseph himself, not a single word of his is recorded. Discretion and hiddenness. Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich saw how serene things were in the Holy Family. Not many words were needed. They had a good intuition of what the other was thinking. She heard no loud laughter, but saw plenty of warm smiles. The Holy House of Nazareth, of course, to which they returned, has been protected by angels, for it was about to be destroyed, and it is now standing miraculously in Loreto. It was for 3 years in Ilidium, the present Slovakia region, but then it was brought to a place where it would receive more honor. And the demon has been obliged to admit how horribly holy it is. He cannot bear it. St. Joseph was hidden also in the life of the Church, always there, quietly invoked, but his name was not in the canon for nearly 2 millennia. Bishop Smith was telling me one time here how he had been witness to a strange event in the early part of the Second Vatican Council, for he was, as a young priest, one of the secretaries, and there was a bishop who had suffered in a communist prison for a good while, who had a great devotion to St. Joseph, and his intervention was going on too long for the parameters allowed in the official interventions in aula. So they were trying to stop him with words like sufficit, and that it wasn't fitting that a preacher should preach to the preachers. But he went on And apparently they didn't realize that probably he couldn't hear what they were saying because his hearing had been damaged under torture. And he was cut off. They eventually had to stop the microphone from functioning. But what they didn't know was that St. John the 23rd was watching it all at a distance through closed circuit television, and he wasn't amused. And the following day he intervened personally. He had got the message, and the request of this holy bishop who had been silenced was heard by the Supreme Pontiff himself, who did something which hadn't been done for 2 millennia. He changed the Roman canon. He added the name of Joseph. And in the missals that we use, if we're celebrating the Old Rite, we have to put it in. We know that at the beginning of the pontificate of Pope Francis, the name was also added to the other Eucharistic prayers, which hadn't been even imagined at that time of the Council. But what is less known is that actually that intuition had already been given to Pope Benedict, and the machinery was already in place for it to be put in. But he withdrew, as we know, fairly suddenly and didn't have time to put it in, so the credit was given to his successor. But they were both, of course, fully aware of the significance of St. Joseph, especially for our time. He is the patron of the Universal Church, and the family right now is under huge attack. Demonic attack. Demolish the family and you demolish the youth and therefore the whole of society. But St. Joseph is around. He is an example of hiddenness, as we see at Knock. He's there quietly with interior mode. It's only St. John the Evangelist who is in a position of speaking. He is preaching. Our Lady reigns as Queen, Queen of Ireland. But Joseph is there at her side. And he is also at our side when we invoke him and give him honor. Many are the miraculous interventions of St. Joseph. Remember, at La Chartreuse, a holy brother, Brother Louis, a Spaniard, who was a great worker but a great contemplative, would always invoke St. Joseph. One day the big clock would not work. He tried everything and it wouldn't work. Everything and it wouldn't work. So he put a statue of St. Joseph at the base of the whole setup of the clock tower, and it worked. The sleeping St. Joseph has come in as a result of the devotion of the present Holy Father, and we need to be as open as St. Joseph to things happening unexpectedly, even angelic interventions. Things do come sometimes in dreams. People now place petitions and actually even money under St. Joseph, and he multiplies things and takes care. And of course he looks after the dying. What a death he would have had, surrounded by the Son of God and his Holy Mother, and the whole army of heaven, waiting for his pure soul. How could he not have been one of the greatest saints of all, given his responsibility? And the child Jesus would have called him Daddy, and that same relationship and bond is still there. Anyone who invokes St. Joseph is coming close, as it were, to the top, for St. Joseph has the year still of the child Jesus, who called him Daddy. St. Joseph is the guardian of virgins. As a good father, he looks after their needs. An example of his fatherly protection can be seen in what he did for a group of religious sisters in 1878. This was in New Mexico. In 1873, the Sisters precisely of Loreto operated a girls' academy in Santa Fe. This academy was very successful, so the sisters wanted to build a new chapel. They hired a well-known architect to complete the task. The building project took 5 years to complete. However, once the chapel was finished, the sisters realized that the chapel lacked a way to get to the upper choir loft without the use of a very long ladder. That loft was 20 feet above the main floor. So climbing such a ladder was very difficult for the sisters, who wore a floor-length habit, of course. They also realized that there was no room left in the main chapel area for a staircase to be built because of the many pews. And the sisters could not rehire the man who had built the chapel because he died shortly after the chapel was completed. What were they to do? They prayed to St. Joseph for help. They began a novena, asking him to send a carpenter to help them. On the day after the novena, a mysterious man arrived at the convent and stated that he was interested in building a staircase up to the choir loft for the sisters. The gentleman had only one request. He wanted to work alone and behind closed doors. They accepted, of course, and hired him. It took the man 3 months to build the staircase. Once the project was completed, the man could not be found. He simply vanished from the town. No one saw him leave, and no one knew who he was. The sisters looked for him everywhere, but could not find him. They even ran an ad in the local newspaper to try and locate him. It didn't work. Unsuccessful, the sisters went to the lumber yard to inquire who had obtained the lumber for the staircase, as well as to pay for the lumber. When questioned, not one person at the lumber yard knew what they were talking about. The sisters were informed that the lumber yard had never sold any wood to any man building a staircase for a chapel. Perplexed, the sisters remembered how odd it was that the man had only had a T-square, a saw, a hammer, and a few other basic tools. Come to think of it, none of the sisters ever did see how the lumber arrived at the chapel either. Intrigued, The sisters and others from the town inspected the staircase and realized that the mysterious man had constructed something quite unique. It was a spiral staircase that didn't interfere with the pews on the main floor in any way. It had 30 steps, no center support or load-bearing column, and appeared to be floating in air. It also contained no nails. It was found to be held together by square wooden pegs. The staircase is an architectural wonder. It's a carpenter's masterpiece. So where did the wood come from? In 1996, a study was done by Forrest N. Easley, a forester and wood technologist for the United States Forest Service and the United States Naval Research Laboratory. His extensive study found that the wood of the staircase is spruce, but unlike any other spruce in the world. Additional studies were undertaken, and it was determined that the spruce that most resembles the kind found in the spiral staircase is only found in Israel. Who was the mysterious man who built the staircase? The sisters believe that it was St. Joseph. After praying and asking their spiritual father to send someone to construct a staircase for them, St. Joseph came himself and built it for the consecrated virgins. The staircase remains intact to this day. Joseph, our Father and Father of all men, look at this time, look again to thy children, whom in adopting the Lord thou hast fathered, whom thou hast gathered to be thine own brethren. Called by thy name, on thy name we are calling, thy charge we are see the perils befalling. This house that shields neath the strength of thy wisdom, this child that seldom finds help in his falling. We are thy portion, we are thine own pardon. Walk thou ahead, place our feet where hast trodden. Thine own unheard and unnoticed come guiding, thy path of hiding where secrets lie hidden. For thou art unknown and wast thus in thy living, none but one near thee saw in thy giving. And 'tis the obscure way that we too would follow, if small or as hell, deep its striving.